Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to the World Below. You may have noticed that over the last few weeks we've been releasing about 2 videos a week, all focused on the World Below RPG. It isn't just because I love working on the World Below, though, it was a lot of fun. It's also because we currently have a crowdfunding campaign going on. You might be tired of hearing about it, but don't worry, it's nearly over. For the Delver's Guide and Secrets of Calm and Chaos, the Player's Handbook and Story Guide's Handbook for the World Below. This is under the header The World Below Buried Treasures. You can back it over on BackerKit. The link is below. And if you back a hard copy, you can request a video, just as David has done for this one. Now, a lot of you have requested videos. A lot of you have backed the books, and I very, very much appreciate that, because The World Below is the only RPG out there that I get royalties from when you buy a copy. So if you just want to support me, if you want to take a punt on The World Below, please do so, because I will actually earn a tiny amount from you doing so, and that is very much appreciated in these lean times. Now, David wanted to know something about mounted combat in the World Below, and specifically wanted to know how feasible it was, how awkward it was, and whether we had rules in particular for it. I think David knew that we were covering mounted combat and Secrets of Calm and Chaos, and so there was something of a leading question, but I don't mind a leading question. I like a question that feeds into something that we've got covered in our books. But you know what? We alluded to it in the World Below's core book as well. We have a thesis, that's like an innate ability that some characters possess, called mounted combat, that gives them an advantage to, riding an animal, a beast, a bug into battle. And now we have lots of rules for those mounts. Not just mounts, but also pets. You see, in Secrets of Calm and Chaos, there are rules, there is narrative, there's a lot of description for the different kinds of animals, different kinds of creatures that you might want to tame and train and ride into battle, or just use for other purposes. Starting with the fact that your mounts and pets, well, first you're going to have to actually capture one. Let's say you do. Let's say you successfully capture one, and you're trying to train it in some means. Well, doing so is usually going to take 1 empathy or persuasion plus presence or composure roll, depending on the methods you're using. You're not going to be doing this multiple times in one scene. This is probably going to be 1 use per scene. And if you do so, you can convert the hits you get on your roll, if you're successful, to train them in certain ways. So, for example, you can train animals, and this is all using the rules that are in Secrets of Calm and Chaos, to become assistance animals. They can basically make up for a sensory difference, a sense that you might lack, for example. You can turn them into beasts of burden, train them to become so. You can train them to being calm if you've got something that's positively feral. You could make a bug into a caregiver, or indeed, if you manage to score 8 huge hits, you could turn your animal somewhat communicative. Even if it can't communicate with you, it will be able to understand you verbally. You can train your beast to have controlled aggression, only vent when you choose, or become a forager. Likewise, you could train your animal to become better at hiding, develop a camouflage ability, or indeed hunting. You can enforce loyalty or saddle train. Saddle train is very, very important, as we'll get onto that with mounted combat. You could train your bug in search and rescue, in tunnel sense, so it always knows its way home, even if you end up stranded somewhere following a chaos storm. That's quite useful. Or overcoming bad habits. Each of these have different costs in the number of hits you need to achieve, so sometimes this is going to be something that you do over a course of scenes, maybe even over a calm season, or something that multiple characters in the group could contribute to if you're all trying to train the same enormous Terror. Now, the riding a Terror, a giant beetle, is something that I've incorporated in almost every single World Below game I've run. I love the visuals of it. The very first World Below scenario I ran, and in fact I've ran this many times, starts with the adventuring party fleeing a pack of Guhak. They are world below cannibals riding a Terror. They are hooting and hollering and generally making a ruckus because they want to eat the player characters, and they're bearing down them on the back of this enormous stag beetle which is charging through the earth towards them. I love that imagery. It's very Hollow Knight in nature, which is one of our central points of inspiration for the world below. And ever since I started thinking of that, I wanted to have rules for it. And so there are now rules for it in Secrets of Calm and Chaos, as we'll get onto. So, for example, before we get onto mounted combat, we have a lot of options for determining your animal's temperament. You can basically roll for it if you want, and we have temperament table here. Let's see. Let's say that I have just cornered an Arachnida, and I'm going through the process of training and taming it. I want to find out its temperament, so I'm going to roll here. Is a 5, is a 57. This is a grumpy Arachnida. This isn't good. And it has a bad habit. Its bad habit is... It's a curious but grumpy Arachnida. The creature's naturally inquisitive, exploring its surroundings wherever possible. But it also resents commands. Sometimes it snaps, bites, or is otherwise aggressive. Fine, I can deal with that. Now, when it comes to mounted combat, as a general rule, you are going to want the mounted combat thesis so that your characters aren't suffering enormous penalties when trying to ride these grumpy bugs. But maybe everyone wants to do it, and so if every character wants to have it, if you want to make it ubiquitous in your game rather than a specialization, you can basically do away with thesis at that point, rather than making all 5 characters buy it. Just say everyone has it. I'm fine with that, so you have my blessing. Otherwise, you're definitely going to want to make sure your animal is saddle trained, otherwise you'll be suffering moderate complications, usually being bucked off, maybe devoured or stung, depending on what kind of animal it is you're riding. But then the mounted combat options open up to you, and by God, there's a few of them. For example, a cavalry charge. Cavalry charge is a great deal of fun. The rider rolls close or ranged combat plus presence. The difficulty is the target's integrity. This is a slight adjustment from the manuscript that went out with the crowdfunding campaign. It was difficulty 3. It's now the target's integrity. If they succeed, then you inflict the terrified status effect on the person you're riding at, and can spend additional hits to affect additional targets with that. This is as you're bearing down on them. You also gain an enhancement on your initiative roll, as you should, because you're riding. You have mounted attacks, which if your mount has controlled aggression, the rider doesn't need to use a mixed action to both ride and attack. Basically, the mount knows that that's what you're about to do. Likewise, there are rules in this chapter for mounted enemies and how quickly you might span range bands. Speed is obviously one of the greatest advantages of being on a mount when in combat. You can also, of course, if you are targeting any unmounted enemies, you have advantage over them and may use the ride down trick on them. If you score 3 hits when riding, you basically overwhelm them, knock them to the ground, make them dazed, use the status effect to that effect. It's a really quite effective way of defeating an opponent who is on foot, even if they are comparatively quite powerful. You could probably knock a Well-Lich down, which would be fun, if unexpected, if you bore down on one on an enormous Arachnida's back. Now, in the book, we have a variety of mounts available. The Saddle Terror, so a large beetle that you could ride. The Escalacta, which is an enormous ooze. Lung lizards, they're amphibians rather than reptiles, but they are very much favoured because they will skim along water. You also have War Vermi. That is your enormous worms that you can ride into battle if you want to play a bit of Dune there. And beyond all of that, we also have rules for playing characters with pets. pets and how to use pets in your game. So if you like the idea of having animal companions that are actually usable in a game rather than a hindrance, because I've played other RPGs where having an animal with you just becomes bookkeeping, this is not that. This basically opens up combat to you in lots of very interesting ways, as well as other features of the game. I very much recommend you check out Secrets of Calm and Chaos. You can find it linked in the video description below in the Buried Treasures campaign, which if you back a physical copy, you can request a video of this sort, or indeed on any role-playing game from me, via MatthewDawkins.com. Now, with that said, I want to say thank you very much for watching. I will be seeing you next time.